Welcome everyone to Caster Calls episode 8. I am with DoA, a familiar face to many of you who have watched StarCraft for a very long time, or watched League of Legends, or watched Overwatch, and now I think you're doing TFT, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, there was a couple years of Hearthstone in there too, actually.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
And I did a little bit this year, but yeah, TFT is the place I'm at now. A little bit of Hearthstone here and there, but mostly TFT at the moment. Going back to the grassroots, building a new scene. It's fun.
That's awesome. But the point is, you've done a lot of esports. I'm sure being just one of the casters from the birth of what we now know as esports back in 2010, you just kind of have to basically bounce around to every esport that you can find. But you were one of the favorites, the old favorites for StarCraft 2, and then you moved to League of Legends and was part of the just like iconic pair for years. And then Overwatch was a huge deal when they got you guys to move over to the States for as long as you did. So we have a ton of stuff to go over for your story. It's quite an adventurous one.
It's been a wild ride, that's for sure. And we're only just getting started, I think. In my opinion, anyway.
I mean, hopefully. More things to do, man.
Yeah, I mean, 10 years isn't that long. We can go another 10 at least.
Yeah, exactly. And it is so weird, too, because, 10 years ago, everyone's optimism said this would all last 10 years plus, and this would get better and better every year. But to have actually it actually happened. We're here 10 years later, and StarCraft 2 is still going, which is pretty cool. But also esports is just continuing to expand, and even one of the businesses that can actually take advantage of this whole quarantine weird thing happening. So kind of the good news.
We're lucky in that regard that we can keep kind of going with business as usual for esports. It's obviously it's way less fun not being in a studio and not getting to be around the fans and the players and having the energy. But at least the show can go on, as they say, where in a lot of other industries, it just kind of stops. So yeah, I think we're kind of lucky being part of esports right now, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. That's the best way to put it. It's not the deal for everyone, but it's still happening. So anyways, for people who don't really know you, could you do your best attempt at giving us a TLDR of your esports journey?
Well, yeah. So my name is Eric Lonnquist. I'm known as DoA in the video game world. And in 2010, I started playing the StarCraft 2 beta, and I really loved it. And I got into the competitive scene, and I decided that commentating looked like fun, and I wanted to try it as a hobby. And that ended up leading to a whole career, actually. Things kind of took off. And then I lived in Korea for 6 years, casting StarCraft 2. Then I did League of Legends and Hearthstone at the same time. And then when Overwatch came out, was really excited about that game. Came back to the States in 2017 to help found the Overwatch League and get that going. Casted it for 2 years, decided to leave. And now back to just purely freelance, just kind of exploring the esports world and kind of getting back into more of the grassroots sort of community building stuff that, really kind of got me into it in the first place. So 10 years on, it's, it's kind of fun to go back to the basics for a year,
Yeah, it's almost like the full circle.
Yeah,
It's 10
exactly.
years later, man.
The first revolution of the esports sort of cycle, I guess.
So you've done it all. You've been from freelance, like the hoarding pennies and sharing hotel rooms with 6 other people, to being the world premiere casters of many different tournaments. And I mean, that's more of a journey than most people can say, because we do typically have a journey where eventually you find that one esport that you just kind of stick with. Some of the StarCraft 2 guys end up going to CSGO, but they've been CSGO casters for, in the grand scheme of things, basically the entire time.
Yeah.
Same with many other esports. That's why you have so many people with their Twitters and Twitch. They have StarCraft 2 in it in some way, because a lot of people started with StarCraft 2. But it's still pretty cool that we get to see the whole just expansion of esports. So now that you've done everything, you've been the almost 9 to 5-esque way of doing esports, as well as the freelance esports. Do you have a preference?
I think one of the things I really miss with 2020 this year is being part of a big league. Overwatch League wasn't the place for me anymore after doing it for a couple of years. So it was definitely, I'm definitely not regretting leaving it. But I do miss being part of that big sort of long-term story that a league sort of offers, where you're sort of watching these players and these teams develop, and you have kind of ongoing storylines, because that's always been my favorite thing in esports is the stories of the players and the organizations, right? So I do miss that. But other than that, I like I said, I'm happy doing a TFT again. It's actually the most mentally engaging game that I've been a part of since StarCraft 2. So that's kind of exciting. And I think there's a lot of parallels between the two games as well, which is weird to say because obviously the APM requirements are much less in TFT. In certain parts, you've got the carousel rounds and stuff, but that's a whole another topic that we could get into later if you want to. But it is kind of interesting that I'm doing a game now that feels very similar to me when I play it, when I cast it to StarCraft 2.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. Let's get into it. The amount of different pacing styles of the games you had to cast certainly would be you'd be more of an expert than other people. But so TFT being a little more like StarCraft 2, I could see that from what I've seen from that genre, because now it's a whole genre, not just a particular game.
Right.
Is that it's like chess, and people have always said that StarCraft 2 is like chess on crack. The
Very
analogy
true.
there.
Yeah.
So
That's a good comparison too. Yeah.
yeah, so
It's
I could see that being the mental game being chess. Is that more what you would compare it to?
I think it reminds me of StarCraft 2 in that you're multitasking to a very large degree because you're managing your economy just like you would in StarCraft 2. You're managing
Mm.
keeping track of what your opponents are doing. You're scouting just like in StarCraft. You're managing your own build, and that involves timings. It involves repositioning things at the right time, which sometimes have to be done in a series of very, very small second increments because you're scouting somebody else. They make a move, you have to make a move to respond. So just the amount of multitasking, the definitive sort of early, mid, and late game that TFT has, where your build develops over time. Sometimes you have to adjust that build and change it if your opponent does something that causes you to react. So I feel like yeah, you flex a lot of the same sort of strategy muscles in TFT that you do in StarCraft, and we're actually seeing StarCraft players move over to TFT and find success as well. Dark Hydra, the German player in Europe, is doing well in TFT now, and Polt, who's
Oh
a
yeah.
multi-tournament winning, hugely famous Korean StarCraft 2 player, is currently the top player on the North American ladder for TFT. So it is starting to actually draw in some notable StarCraft names actually, which is kind of validating my thoughts on it, which is kind of neat to see. But it's just such a great game. It's just so mentally engaging and fun, and it's been a joy to get into the scene.
Yeah, I knew that Polt was a pretty successful streamer with it, but I didn't realize he was like one of the best right now. So that's
He's
pretty
a
cool.
legitimately great ladder player, yeah.
But it also makes sense that there's like the natural like just the pull of gravity to certain different games. I mean, typically, stereotypically, a lot of StarCraft people would go into poker actually,
Right.
and even if they don't go into full time poker, we've all basically played it. Even I've eventually been suckered in to playing it and learning it.
Yeah, I know a lot of guys that used to do StarCraft 2, and now they kind of make a living playing poker for part of the year, and then they just go party for the other part of the year. But yeah, I think you can find those games out there that like I mentioned, kind of like stimulate those same sort of like mental muscles, right? And there's some people that are really really good at using those, and so those types of games, definitely jive well with them.
hmm Well, how about the pacing of the casting? Do you have a typical play-by-play and color commentators like anything else? Is it slower like StarCraft, or is it really
It's
hyper?
I would say the roles are definitely much less defined in TFT. It's a lot like Hearthstone or a card game in that you really do need two experts casting it. Uh, there's not really a big point to like calling the team fights and team fight tactics like you would in League of Legends, because in League of Legends, the plays that the champions are being made by individual human beings who are executing skills and plays and things like that themselves. Whereas in this, during the fights, it's an auto battler. It's running automatically. It's based on what you set up to happen beforehand, and that has a large influence on the fight. But it's not really being controlled by anyone. So you don't really, there's
Yeah.
definitely moments of excitement, but you're not like, whoa, look at that move, because nobody really actually did it. So yeah, I think you kind of have this hybrid thing where you need to get hyped about the exciting moments, like you would in a game like Hearthstone, but most of the game is talking about strategy, talking about the players' decisions, what they're going through, mentally that cause them to make those decisions, and so in that case, I think there's not well defined roles. There really doesn't need to be with TFT.
I mean, through all your games, have you stuck to one role, or what
No,
role
not at
was it?
all.
Okay, you're
I was an
flexible.
analyst in StarCraft 2. And I did some play by play, but I did do a lot of analysis as well, which may shock people because I'm kind of more known as a play by play caster, but I kind of got my start doing a little bit of both in StarCraft 2. In Hearthstone, again, you kind of need to be an analyst, kind of like what I mentioned with TFT, and with TFT as well. So while I kind of gravitate towards play by play, in that it's the role that I enjoy the most because I'm more interested, I guess, in the player and the organizational stories and the emotion and the hype of a match. And I just kind of like to joke around a lot. I do also really enjoy analyzing games too, and doing that kind of thing. And so TFT has been a great chance to go back and sort of like use that part of my casting that I haven't gotten to do for a while, you know. So I prefer to do one, but I can do both, and it is fun to go back and do the other thing for a while too.
Yeah. Well, how much of that is because you eventually really got you and Monte were the two guys, like you were paired up together. I mean, how
Yeah.
did that actually start? Was it something that you coordinated together, or more of a forced thing that you just found out worked for you?
Yeah, so we casted together for 7 years. And he's such a great analyst, and you know, he's a better analyst than I could ever hope to be, you know, in pretty much any game. So it was natural to kind of like have him take that role, and I could focus more on the play by play. But the way it started really was when I went to OGN in 2012. They in my first meeting with them, right after I got back to Korea, they said, you know, because initially I was going out there to cast StarCraft 2. We hadn't really talked about League of Legends. But in the first meeting, they said, so we want you to cast StarCraft 2 and League of Legends. You can cast League of Legends, right? And I had like played a few games casually with friends, but I really knew nothing about the game. And so, of course, I was like, yeah, absolutely, I can cast League of Legends, no problem. And then I was like, oh man, I got to learn League of Legends. And it's a fun game. I already liked it. You know, like I mentioned, I was playing it a little bit for fun already. And when I was at IGN Pro League, the doomed IPL for a short time, I sat right next to Hat Person and Red Baron, who were the two League of Legends casters there. So I was getting into the game already a little bit then, asking them questions about it, watching some matches and stuff like that, but only in a very casual sense. So when OGN asked me to do League of Legends, I was excited to do it because I liked the game and I saw it was gaining popularity. But I also knew that I needed an analyst. You know, I didn't have the level of game knowledge like I did with StarCraft 2 to kind of carry that. So that's why I told OGN, I'm like, yeah, I can do it, but we need to bring an analyst out here. And so Trevor Houston, who works for Blizzard now, but was also a StarCraft 2 pro way back in the day, also worked for GOM TV, worked for OGN as a lead caster for a little while. He knew the scene better, and he was already planning on moving on at that point. So he kind of found like a short list of analysts he thought would be good. And on that list was Monte. And he was kind of giving me like the basic breakdown of all the different people. And the funny thing he said about Monte was that like, oh, he's very mature, he's very serious, good, but he's kind of mean. And and I was like, you know what? We could use some maturity out here. That sounds great. If he's a little bit mean, that's fine. I can handle it. Whatever. And but that's how he was originally proposed to me as a possible co-caster. Is that he's a great analyst. He's mature, but he's mean. And I was like, okay, sure. So then I was like, yeah, let's bring him out. So I told OGN that's the person I wanted to cast with. Having never met the guy, never talked to him. And they brought him out to Korea, and we got to know each other. And thankfully things really clicked. We kind of became friends very quickly, and it was great, you know. And then 7 years of being partners on the broadcast after that. So yeah, and still very good friends as well, even though we're not casting together as much anymore. Hopefully we'll get to do some stuff together in the future, but don't worry, there's no like anger. It wasn't like a bad split or anything like that. We knew eventually we'd go different directions. So yeah, that's just kind of how it goes.
I know what you mean. I know why you're making sure to say that, because
Yeah.
not only I'm sure you've read plenty of dumb comments thinking they know better, but I've had similar things. You know, anytime you stop casting with someone, it's like, do they hate each other? And it's like, well,
Yeah, exactly. Oh no, what happened? It's like, well, sometimes people's career goals just go in different directions.
Yeah. Yeah. So all the way back then, I mean, coming off of StarCraft 2 as being more well known as the analyst role, did you find yourself having to also practice play by play since you were learning League of Legends, but you're also like really filling in this role to to a T? It was you as play by play and him as analyst.
I think play by play kind of came to me pretty naturally. I'm a naturally excitable person and naturally kind of like hype oriented person, I suppose you could say. So getting excited wasn't a problem. I think as far as play-by-play goes, the real development over time with that came in terms of managing the hype itself, like knowing the moments to get hype and knowing the moments to build the hype, right? And that's kind of the number one thing that new play-by-play casters struggle with is if you're at 100% energy 100% of the time, if everything is exciting, then nothing is exciting, right? And you create the sort of like wall of noise, and the viewer doesn't really know, if they're not, intimately familiar with the game, what they should be getting excited about, right? So that was a big thing to kind of like learn over the years. The other thing with League of Legends specifically, when I knew I was going to be casting it, I had about 2 months before my first cast. And so I downloaded an app on my phone with all the champions, all the abilities. I'd be on like the subway in Seoul, and I would like open up a champ, memorize all their abilities, and then I would like close the app and like try to say it back to myself. And I would just sheer like memorization of like I think it was like around 100 champs at the time with like 4+ different abilities and stuff. And so a lot of memorization. When I wasn't on the app on the subway, I would be in a PC bong, an internet cafe with friends of mine playing League of Legends all day long. I'd wake up in the morning, we'd play for like 6 hours, and then I would watch VODs. World Season 2 is the first tournament that I like really, really watched and studied, because that happened right before OGN Champions Winter 2012 started. So yeah, just kind of like lived, ate, slept, breathed League of Legends until my first cast to get ready for it. And even then, it's even with that, it's like League is such a big game, it was never enough. So it was a lot more work after that, of course. But I think the initial crunch really helped me get prepared properly for it.
So you went from also a very, well, I mean, I can't say this, like, I'm going to get your opinion. How were the
Sure.
fights different between StarCraft and League of Legends? Being used to hearing maybe your co-caster in StarCraft hype things up, but how does that compare to League of Legends, which to me seems faster even than StarCraft 2, but you tell me.
I think there's a lot more spontaneity in the team fights in League of Legends than in StarCraft 2. In StarCraft 2, you certainly get big moments as far as micro goes, as far as like if someone gets like the perfect storm on like the right unit, someone doesn't move, a baneling hits something that you don't expect it to hit. There's stuff that happens there in StarCraft, but with StarCraft, you do a lot of setup to kind of set expectations with what could happen in the team fight, what should happen really. And then if it happens, you can be like, wow, that player really executed that well. And if something else happens, then that's exciting in that you can say, oh, wow, this was the direction it was going. But now look, this happened. And a lot of that stuff still applies to League of Legends as well. But where you've got a greater degree of micromanagement going on, where each unit itself essentially is able to move around, do different abilities and things like that. It is a little bit faster paced because it's more than just this unit does this attack and this is where it's doing it. It's like this champion has these abilities and they're using them in this order because of this reason. And this ability pairs with this, and this ability affects this ability. This ability got interrupted. So I think there is more within a League of Legends team fight to talk about. And so parsing that and on the fly figuring out what the most important things to talk about is one of the difficulties and one of the fun things about it. I guess that would make League's team fights a little bit more fast paced in that I think there's a lot more to react to right there. There's less setup you can do per se. But aside from that, I think a lot of the skills do transition fairly well.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. Maybe almost more like retrospective, because it really feels like whenever I watch League, like sometimes the fights happen so staggered that it's like I would think StarCraft 2 play by play as well. But then sometimes it's like team battle. Okay, everyone disperse. And I'm like, okay, what happened there? So then I have to lead up to you guys to, usually they have like the recap because of course the production's pretty insane. And
Yeah.
and then I the slowdown, and then I get it, which yeah, it feels more like, I don't know if retrospective is the right word, but then StarCraft, where you can almost always kind of get everything out and said. And then as you were talking about, like afterwards, you can be like, oh, but that's why this thing I was prepping for didn't work out.
Right.
Yeah. So it seems like we're even leading into Overwatch casting then. So League of Legends gets a little bit faster, gets a little more just like, okay, I had to soak it all up and then parse what happened. And then Overwatch comes and you're still the play-by-play commentator. And Overwatch is just, it feels like it's that, but even faster, like one of the hardest ones to actually cast with in general. So how did you move into Overwatch casting from that?
Well, Overwatch is definitely the hardest game I've ever casted, and pretty much I can't think of a single caster that has casted Overwatch and hasn't said the same thing. Honestly,
Mm,
that Overwatch is the hardest game they've ever casted because it's so fast paced, but there's also extreme vision limitations as far as what you can see going on because there's a lot of sort of tight confines for the camera in the game. So basically Overwatch is like League of Legends in terms of team fight casting. It would be like League of Legends, but you add another character on each side, and you take it from like a first person view, or you zoom way in so you can't see the whole fight going on. And so with that limited degree of information, it's much harder to sort of like do that type of thing you would do in League of Legends, where be aware of positioning. You mentally you can kind of prepare for what abilities people are going to use probably. So yeah, it's just a lot harder and a lot more fast paced. And when we were getting into Overwatch League, we had about a year to prepare or so. Maybe Monte and I were casting a little bit already in Korea with Apex, but then we had about maybe 6 months, I suppose, after we moved to LA before the league began. I think it was like something like May to January, so about 7 months or so, or whatever. I can't do math, but we talked a lot about how we wanted to cast it, and we looked at fighting games a lot and their commentary style for examples with that because we thought there's just like in a fighting game, there's always action happening. And you don't need to talk about every little bit of action because that just gets fatiguing, honestly. So we decided that the most important thing was to have kind of a chill flow through most of the gameplay, and then really hit the exciting moments with the very important abilities being used, the very important like kills being executed, right? Like call attention to
mm.
those more than anything, especially on the play-by-play side. But you don't need to call it every kill. You don't need to call it every ability. And we decided to kind of approach it like that because otherwise, it's like you said, there's just way too much to talk about, right? And if again you talk about every ability that's being used in sequence, then it's kind of like you're reading off a spreadsheet, and it's just a wall of noise again, right?
That's so interesting that you went to fighting games. I mean, it makes absolute sense now that you've said it. It's one of those the one genre that I'm not like super into. I don't watch a lot of fighting games, but when I do watch fighting games, yeah, I'm always amazed at how they cast. I'm just like, well,
Oh
there's
yeah, the commentary is
constantly
great in fighting
something
games.
happening, but you guys are still fitting in like analysis every now and again.
Yeah.
Um,
In
so
fact, it's
that's
mostly analysis. If you watch like a
yeah.
Street Fighter cast or a Smash Brothers cast, they're mostly, talking analysis stuff, honestly.
Yeah, but it's so different. It is so different than StarCraft. And of course, my personal bias is that StarCraft pacing is the best, but of course, people would disagree. But yeah, that's really cool. So you looked to a different genre of casting to really give you insight into how to cast this game that was going to be big no matter what, with all just being funneled into it. Did
Right.
you have any, I guess, not mentors? Did you talk to anyone who was already casting, or the players, or anyone in production?
Not really. I mean, Overwatch was you couldn't really rely as much on other FPS casters because Overwatch was so
Mm,
different from like Counter Strike. It's a totally different skill set.
mm-hmm.
So there wasn't a whole lot of experienced people with Overwatch style casting, like not Team Fight, Team Fortress 2 casting was probably the most similar, but that it's such a small scene and it's
Yeah.
a bit older. So we kind of just wanted to just say, let's develop something ourselves and figure that and develop it ourselves over time, and work in iterations where it's like we casted this way for a while. Let's change this about it and see if that works. And that was kind of more our approach to Overwatch at that point. Because both of us have been casting for so long, we should be able to figure it out, right? So I think it's always good when you can kind of get some feedback from other peers in the industry. But I think we really wanted to try to like develop our own thing and work on that.
Well, yeah, that's I feel like that's something that I would only do if I felt very confident in my status in the industry, which of course you guys had built up for years before that.
We
Um,
had the luxury of being able to approach it that way. That's for sure.
Yeah. So you get to Overwatch League, and it is the most 9 to 5 that I can think of when I think of esports jobs. Did you come in and have like a bunch of meetings about their particular the branding they wanted to bring, the style of casting they wanted to bring? Did you have to conform to anything?
Also, we, Nate Nanzer brought Monte and I in as Overwatch League employees like 3 and 4. We were the first talent they
Oh
hired.
wow.
We were almost the first anybody they hired. There's another individual at Blizzard named Marissa that was the other employee of the Overwatch League at the time. So yeah, when we joined it, when we signed our contracts and got started, we were a full 50% of the Overwatch League staff at that point. So essentially they were relying on us to sort of like shape the talent team, the broadcasting team, and we made a lot of suggestions about who to bring in, as far as casters go, as far as desk talent goes and stuff like that. Monty worked a lot with Nate on the business side of things and things like the tournament format. I worked a lot with the actual development team on like the spectator mode, giving feedback with that, how to make the game easier. I was working with our producers on documents that had sort of observing standards that the observers could follow. And so we were working on stuff like that basically in the time we were in LA before the Overwatch League began. So really just kind of doing everything we could to help to get the league started off on the best foot possible broadcast wise.
Wow, this is really making me reevaluate the history of Overwatch League. That's really awesome. So you guys were brought in, and you set the standard for the entire casting team, which is of course the face of Overwatch, really, perhaps even more so than the players. Actually, on top of that, on that topic, do you think that's something that you guys shot for? Was that the personalities would really drive the scene? Because you also have
Yeah.
the branding that's involved with always having duo casters, the same guys over and over again.
Well, we felt it was really important to have static duos as well and not be mixing people up. So that was part of it. I think when we were, taking part in, giving input on the talent crew, I think one of our big goals was to create a pool of talent that was very low drama, that was filled with just like genuinely good people from different games who just really cared about esports and really wanted to make a good product. And I'm actually really proud of the talent crew that we were able to help put together because man, what a great crew we had in year one especially. It was fantastic. It was year 1 and 2, I guess, where there was no ego, there was no dumb backstabbing stuff like you get sometimes. It's the entertainment industry, so sometimes people could be a bit sketchy, but that crew is so solid, and everybody was great to each other and supporting each other and really wanted the league to do well. Um, so yeah, it was a great crew, and it was a great crew to be a part of. Um, and actually, anecdotally, we were brought in as casters, but contractually, we were also brought in as consultants as well. So we were actually being paid to consult with Blizzard to help build the league as much as we were to actually cast it when it got started too. So that was one of the things that really appealed to us when they came to us with the offer, was that it's not just, hey, come and cast this. It's, hey, come and like really help build this, which we'd been casting in Korea for a long time, and we both loved League of Legends and still love League of Legends, but you kind of feel like a little bit capped out at that point. It's like, where do you go from there? And so being able to work directly with Blizzard, which is a company that we both, love. I've been a Blizzard fan since I was a little kid, like a really little kid in the 90s, like the early 90s, playing like some of the very early Blizzard stuff like Rock and Roll Racing and Blackthorn and the original Warcraft, like on like DOS. So being able to like go into the Blizzard offices and work with the dev team and sit over the shoulders of the hero designers and watch them, make stuff and all that was just great, and I got to have a lot of great conversations with Jeff Kaplan about the theory of game design and all that kind of stuff, which is just awesome, and so so we kind of like looked at that opportunity and we're like, well, yeah, we have to do it. Neither of us really wanted to leave Korea, but you have to go where the opportunities are in esports, and it just seemed like such a great opportunity. And it was great for the first like year and a half. It was amazing.
I mean, that sounds really cool. I feel like a lot of commentators that I know, at least, would also find it very difficult to pass up such a chance. Like if they're going to tell you, like, you are going to
For
consult with
sure.
us to make this league bigger and better. I mean, even like me, and I'm like still I consider myself like one of the babby commentators, even though I've been doing it for a while,
Oh, I
just
don't know
compared to the
about
other
that.
guys. Compared to the other
I
guys, it
would
feels that
disagree
way.
with that, but it's good to stay humble.
Anyways, like it just like it would be a really momentous opportunity because I think, you start from down in the trenches, right? So you get the
Yeah.
feeling of like what can be improved and how to talk to also your future, not your employees, but your other the casters that you're having a lot of influence over. So that's really sick. That's was that just did they tell you that they were just like, we guys think you're great and you'll have great input, or was this something that you were already kind of, you know, sleuthing around, telling people like, yeah, it'd be interesting to get more into the uh non-casting stage?
I think so. I think that was part of it. I
Mm,
love casting and I just want to keep casting, but I also want to do more behind the scenes, and that's always been our goal. And to a certain extent with a Korean broadcaster, it can be a little bit difficult sometimes because
mm,
they have their process. You're a foreigner, so it's hard to kind of like insert yourself into that that team quite as easily. So I mean, right from the very beginning when Overwatch was announced, we both have connections to Blizzard over the years. You know, people from Blizzard would come to Korea, we'd hang out with them and stuff. And so we basically just let Blizzard know right away, hey, we want to cast this game like this. We want this to be our next big game, and help build that. And actually, in our OGN contracts, the year before they started doing Apex, we had in our contract that if OGN did an Overwatch tournament, we had to be the casters for it. We actually like
oh,
put that in our contracts a year before to ensure that like we got into it because we wanted to,
yeah.
we really wanted to be part of the game. We were excited about it. So yeah, so with Overwatch specifically, we wanted to be really involved with helping develop this esports scene because the game looked so good, and because we trusted Blizzard too. So
That does help. I mean, I remember playing it, the announcement was a huge shock. Like they did a very good job of not leaking anything.
yeah.
And you see it for the first time at BlizzCon 2015 or 16 or something like that. And it was pretty insane. So, I mean, we also had a phase where we wanted to jump on top of it, but creating a grassroots scene with a match that had 12 players was really difficult to do.
Yeah, for sure.
Not much money you could spread around there. But anyways, that's really sick. Like you guys sound like I, okay, like I'm gonna go into the business side now.
Sure.
One of our, for StarCraft 2, we recognize Tastosis as one of the only branded pair that really exists anymore. I mean, back in the day,
Mhm.
you had a bit of like the Bitter Dam, and when he was doing like the like Kevin Aki and you and not whatnot. But
Sure.
after a while, it became only just Tastosis, and we were constantly revolving around. No one's really built that brand, but of course, you and Monte were able to build a brand, which is literally lasted over 7 years, as well as a couple of different esports. So, did you at any point after kind of getting familiar with each other, and did you sit down and be like, look, like we can improve our casting, but we can also improve our branding? Did you ever like hone in on the business side of things?
Um, not so much. I think there was always sort of the knowledge that we wouldn't be a duo forever, in that we really, really loved casting together, and we did everything we could to push ourselves as a duo, while that made sense. But
Mm-hmm.
Monty always wanted to go towards the direction of working more behind the scenes, like what he's doing now at Flashpoint, and I always just wanted to like keep casting and also work more on the creative side in terms of like making side content and that kind of stuff with an organization. um so I think as far as like the business side of that, we didn't really pursue that, I think because we knew that eventually we'd go our separate directions anyway, and things were going so well at the time. Anyway, there wasn't really like a big feeling of need to do that, right? Where we were able to sort of promote ourselves as a brand, in the events that we were doing with OGN and things like that contractually. And so, yeah, I don't think we really worried too much about that.
Interesting. I mean, I know that Tastosis, would back in the day would literally just say, "It's always us," for the finals, for instance, or it's
Sure.
you got to hire us as a team if you're going to hire anyone from MLG. So there was nothing of that with you and Monty. It just kind of worked out.
We preferred to be, we did kind of set the rule that like if either of us were going to be casting, it was going to be as a team. Like there was
Hmm.
a year that he did Worlds and I didn't, and but he refused to cast. He was like, I will only do the desk. I won't cast if it's not with DoA. So there was that. We never asked to ensure a finals or anything like that. I think both philosophically we don't think that casters should do that. I think that's something where that's the tournament organizer's decision, and we want to respect that. And I think no one should ever feel entitled to a finals, no matter how good they are or think they are, because that just causes unnecessary drama. I think it's on the tournament organizer to pick who they think are going to be the best pair for the finals, and if that's not you, you shouldn't take it personally, and that's that's the philosophy we always operated with, just because it's better to get along with anyone than like do a finals. Like ultimately, like, yeah, finals, great, you did a finals, congratulations, great job. But at the end of the day, if you had to like rub the production the wrong way, if you had to like strain your relationship with other people in the industry, other casting duos, like it's not worth it. So yeah, so we never once demanded or even requested to do a finals in any of the events we did.
Okay, I mean, that's fair. I think there's both sides to that argument, of course, and I've never felt like mad or anything of people who do the finals, but I've always felt honored if I got chosen to do one, for sure.
Sure.
With that, like, do you always trust your tournament organizers? I mean, personally, I can say there's been times where I felt like, and probably even literally been told, like, casters are low priority. First, you got to actually make the tournament, right? And then you got to make
Mm.
sure everything's works smoothly. And there's usually only one guy doing all these things. So, of
Yeah,
course,
sure.
casters are notified pretty late, And I mean, did that ever bother you? Did this happen with Riot? Or did you actually really trust the people who were making all these decisions?
I think it kind of depends. It's kind of a case by case basis. If you're working with like an OGN or something, then then you trust them, right?
Hmm.
If you're working with a tournament organizer that's new, then what we would try to do a lot is support them as much as we could, and just be very open with like, hey, I'm here, I'm in the hotel room, but if you need anything, just let me know. We're happy to help with non-casting stuff. So I think kind of one of the things a caster should do is sort of try to go the extra mile when they're at an event and really try to be involved in things other than casting and really support the tournament, just so that you can have more of a hand in everything going well. Because if you show up to a tournament and it's a huge disaster and you didn't do anything at all to try to prevent that, if you knew some of that was going to happen in advance, then you're kind of doing a disservice to yourself, right? And to the tournament. So yeah, so I think it's good to have that support, because that alleviates a lot of trust issues with the tournament organizer, and it kind of prevents a lot of problems before they become problems. So I think we always kind of approached events and tournaments like that where we want to support, besides casting as much as we can too, to make sure things go as smoothly as they can. And you can't always influence it. Obviously, tournament organizers, people are going to make mistakes, and you have to deal with it. But then it's like, don't get mad. Don't get revenge, don't call people out on it, in front of everyone else. Do what you can to fix it, but just be nice about it. And despite like Monte's reputation for being a little bit rough, right? When it comes to actually working events, generally we always try to be very understanding and supportive rather than confrontational.
Right. Yeah. I mean, how much do you think uh with most of your jobs, with most of the jobs you've gotten, you've kind of come in at good times for the esport. Back in
Sure.
2011, StarCraft 2, there was a ton of events all the time. Whether they were run well or paid very well is a different issue, but there were events all the
Yeah.
time. Then obviously you were a mainstay for Korea for League of Legends, and Overwatch League was, well, you were literally part of it. So, do you ever think that like some of the like the reasons that you could kind of continue, like, you could build trust with tournament organizers or talk to them or not, or brush off mistakes, was that there was always the next time? You always knew that this wasn't going to be the final, that we're going to work with you again, and that's okay if it's a mistake, or just building relationships with all these people. Did that
Well, I think
go
that's
ahead?
always the assumption you should have. You should go into every tournament and every group you work with the assumption that you're going to work with them again. And if you have that mentality, then you're hopefully that'll help you be a little bit more humane in terms of how you deal with mistakes and things like that. Because again, like I think the core goal that everyone should have in this industry is to grow the industry and to make the industry better. So if there's an organization that wants to do esports, that's great. you want them to do well no matter who they are. And so if you go into it with the perspective that they're going to succeed, and you're going to work with them again, then then I think that makes things run a lot smoother in terms of handling issues that might arise, because again, you're keeping the goal of like, we're growing esports, that's the ultimate thing we're doing, and so because of that, we're ready to handle the challenges that are going to arise.
So how important do you think it is that how let me see, how do I put this? Do you think that the majority of people in esports, because you've been through quite a few, but that the majority are actually like pretty cool people, and the reason that they've gotten to where they are is because they've managed to have good mentalities, like the one you're just talking about? Or do you think that there's a couple of people who maybe aren't the most professional, who maybe get a little bit salty at other things, like that are still circulating in the scene? Like, how
Yeah.
rewarding is it to be a good person?
So every, I mean, when you're talking about the overall talent pool in esports, all the commentators, all the, desk hosts, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, there's definitely some jerks in there. There's definitely some divas in there. But I would say that the vast majority are the vast majority of big names right now, like
Hmm.
95% plus of the big names in esports right now are big names because they're talented, but they're also just decent people. They're easy to work with. They put the production before themselves,
Hmm.
and that's how I think personally that's how you succeed, right? Is you put the broadcast before yourself. You aren't a diva. You do the best job you possibly can, but you're also nice to people, right? You don't backstab anyone. You don't try to sneak a finals away from anyone or something like that. Um, I think one of the important things with commentators is being very important, or being very open about pay, uh,
Mm.
making sure that you're getting what you need to survive, but also make sure that your co-casters are getting what they deserve as well. And going that extra mile, I think is important too, because again, like as a unit, as casters, we have to push the industry forward and make it a career, right? And it can't be a career if you can't make a living doing it. So we always in Korea especially, we're very concerned about what the other casters were making too, and making sure that they were making enough. So we were always fighting for like higher starting contracts for all the casters that came up. And so every new caster that came to Korea after Monte and I did started off at a higher pay level than the one before them. um, of course, we were making more money over time too, based on like our merit, based on what we've done,
Hmm.
for OGN. But we also wanted people to be able to come out here and be like, this is my career now. I don't need to worry about money. I just can focus on becoming better as a caster and, doing better in the industry. And so nobody was like fabulously wealthy, like there's this sort of like, mistake out there that people think casters are like rich and stuff. And some casters have a decent amount of money, but honestly, like we don't make a ton. You're not in
Hmm.
esports for the pay, that's for sure. You're in it because you like esports, right?
Yeah.
But it's important that you can make a living doing it too. And so we were always pushing for higher caster pay, especially in League of Legends. We did a lot of work in terms of Monte, especially in terms of getting the pay rates up there and making sure people were compensated properly for that.
There's always this perception that even if maybe we're making a lot of money, we're making too much money to be talking about video games,
Yeah, well,
which,
those people are ignorant. The people that think
yeah,
that, like,
exactly.
because it's sure, video games have an inherent silliness to them, but it's still a serious job. And the with any commentating job, 90% of the work happens off camera, right?
Hmm.
All the stats prep, working producers, going through segments, practicing your intro, memorizing the run of show. Like, there's a lot of work that goes into it, and even to this day with esports, especially now, unfortunately, in our coronavirus sort of world, people will be like, "Oh, well, you're just casting from home, and it's whatever, so we don't need to pay you as much." It's like, well, I'm home, but I'm not working less. In fact, I'm actually working more now than I've ever worked before. So, you know, it is a prerogative of companies and tournament organizers to pay you as little as possible, and ignore any sort of work that you're doing that they possibly can in general. But it is important to reiterate time and time again that it is a full-time job. You're not just showing up and talking about the video game. There's a lot of prep that goes into it, and it has to be respected like a full-time job. And so that's less of a struggle now than it was in the past, but it still is a struggle.
Well, it's great to hear that mostly like, good people get rewarded. I certainly coming in from my perspective, StarCraft, that is definitely one of the things that you have to be is basically just a good person. Just
Yeah.
get along with people. Like, and so much of the chemistry matters on stream. So it just works out best when you actually like everyone, right?
Oh yeah,
But
for
I don't know
sure.
about the bigger esports, and I've always, at least back in around 2013, I want to say, basically when StarCraft 2 was no longer the main esport and there was a lot more popping up. Part of the Swarm was popping up, for instance, as Blizzard's first big attempt to like franchise an esport. Like,
Oh, Heroes of the
I did
Storm. See,
hear.
see, we do this. Us StarCraft people do this. We call Heroes of the Storm Heart of the Swarm.
Did I do that?
You
Oh,
did.
wow. Okay.
Yep.
I
Don't worry.
did.
I've done it like
Okay.
a
Here's.
thousand times. Everybody does that.
I mean, I've definitely accidentally called it like HOTS, but yeah. And
Yeah.
so Heroes of the Storm was coming up. My bad. I was correct though. 2013 was also Heart of the Swarm, but yeah.
Yes, that's true.
Uh, no, Heroes of the Storm was coming up, and that's where I heard a lot of the just like I wonder how much pruning has been done basically come 10 years later after the birth of esports as we know it came to be. Like how much pruning has been done to get rid of those people who were doing weird stupid things like being divas or stealing away finals or undercutting, and that was a
I
big
think the
deal.
nice thing is that a lot of times they self prune. So like somebody like that will generally eliminate themselves from the community because
Hmm.
they'll just, alienate themselves by doing a lot of things that people don't like, or being hard to work with, or, doing things off broadcast that are less than savory, right? So
Hmm.
I think one of the nice things about esports right now, because we're growing, sure, but like we're still a fairly small entertainment industry overall, compared to TV or film or something, right? So there's more. It's much more meritocratic. Is that meritocratic? Is that the right word? It's more of a meritocracy in that
Yeah.
doing good work will get you farther than connections or wealth or something like that. You can't buy your way into an esports casting position right now. At least I've never heard of that happening. So
Hmm.
we're still fairly fortunate in that we kind of escape a lot of the less than savory things that happen in other entertainment industries. Um, for now, if we continue and succeed in our mission to get bigger, those problems will also get bigger. But it really is on people like us that are here, in the still early stages to sort of like set the tone and set the standards for what we'll accept as an industry. And hopefully that'll help us sort of avoid the problems you see in Hollywood for as long as we can.
Hopefully. Now I do
Yeah.
know that there's still obviously drama that happens, but it does feel like it's also more on the fan base. This conversation's reminding me of just what's the word, like moving between esports. When we see someone come in to do X job in an esport that typically has its like group of 10 people already chosen, community backlash seems to be large. Like
Sure. They get
Rainbow
protective of their
Six.
their crew,
Yes, they do. And in
Yeah.
some ways, that's nice because what if the scene is really small and really like you take away one job, you're taking away an eighth of their income. Like
Mhm.
if it's that bad, then that really sucks. But Rainbow Six recently had this happen where they had a different host than usual, and StarCraft 2 was one of the first like no one does anything else except StarCraft 2 or we hate you type stereotypes.
I've
But yeah,
definitely
but
been there.
yeah, I know. But yeah, you've moved on to so many different esports. Like, how does it feel to move into an esport that might already have a group of casters that the community certainly likes, but have been doing something for years? I mean, do you
Mhm.
ever, hope this isn't too hard of a question. Do you ever feel guilty, like you're coming in like I'm DoA and I'm best, so
Uh,
move aside?
not really, because I think with every game you still need to earn your place to a certain
Mm.
extent. Like you can't just show up and be like I'm Doa and I'm casting this game now. You still need to put in the work because that's the thing is you've got your reputation in one game and it might be great, but then in another game, um, it might not be so great. And I've certainly experienced that throughout my career, right? Where obviously in Overwatch I was not as popular as I was in League of Legends. And I agree. I don't think my Overwatch casting was as good as my League of Legends casting for a lot of different reasons. It certainly wasn't because I put less work into Overwatch. I probably worked harder on Overwatch than League of Legends, honestly. if anything, it's just, the pace of the game just doesn't jive well with the way I like to call games,
Hmm.
but it's kind of refreshing in a certain sense, in that you don't really feel the pressure of needing to like be the best, or like think you should be the best or something like that. I've always been most concerned about what my opinion on my performance is. I've never really cared what like Reddit or Twitter or anything says about my casting, because I just don't view that as a good source of feedback. So if it's not really helping me to like listen to it, then I can just pretty much ignore it. And the same goes for compliments too. Like, I appreciate compliments, but ultimately they aren't qualified to give me those either. So so I think just ignoring social media in general, is healthy for a caster. But yeah, when you do different games, you definitely can't expect to, suddenly be like God's gift to that game just because of your success in another game. You have to earn it, and you have to work for it. And I
Hmm.
I that. I wouldn't want it to be different. And it's nice when fans follow you, and I appreciate that. I've always been very thankful for that. But I think, respect in any game should be earned.
So have you ever been in a position where you actually kind of, it sounds so far that you've mostly been invited, but have you ever been in a position where you've offered your services to something, like even just like a random show of being a host, where you're like, you gave them a resume or a demo reel, or just hit them up and said, hey, I'm pretty good at this?
Actually, like, I've been doing a lot of that this year with
Hmm.
TFT, because I really like the game, and so at the beginning of the year, I just started reaching out to all the tournament organizers I could, all the people I could, and said, "Hey, I love TFT and I want to cast it. Give me a shot." And so I was able to get some gigs early on doing that, and now I'm casting TFT pretty much every week right now. And as long as there's a tournament going with a bunch of different organizations, and it's been awesome. And I've worked really hard to get better at the game and improve my casting with that, just like anything else. But yeah, you definitely need to go look for jobs sometimes. And I've been fortunate in that I've gotten to do a lot of 1 year, 2 year contracts, right, with
Hmm.
organizations, which certainly takes a lot of stress off of being freelance. That's for sure. If you can get a long contract like that, but it doesn't mean you can't lose your edge, right? You can never be too prideful, I guess, to think that people will come to you with work as a freelancer. You need to always be looking. And so this year has been a lot more of that, of course, but it's kind of by intent. I kind of wanted to put myself back into the trenches and feel that feeling again, and see if I could still hack it, as like a fully freelance caster. This year's a real test for me. It's been a challenge, no joke. But but I'm glad I did it. It's good to see things from this side of it again.
Yeah, yeah, but it is certainly a little more nerve wracking.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
When you reach out to people, do you have a demo reel that you use?
No, I should make one of those eventually.
Oh, it's okay.
I don't have a demo reel. I really should make one. I'm even represented by a talent agency now, and I still don't have one. I should really do that. But I don't know. Like, I'm too lazy to make one. And I've been too lazy to pay someone else to make one. So a lot of it is just I thankfully at this point in time, after you've been doing it for 10 years, people are just familiar with your work, and so
Mm,
if they're going to hire me, they kind of know what they're getting, because pretty much everybody in esports that's looking for casters would have been familiar with my work by now. And that's not like a humble brag or something like that, or a less than humble brag. That's just kind of like, I've just been doing it for so long, and I've been in so many games that people are just simply familiar with me, so I've gotten away with not having to, have much of a resume or much of a demo reel. So far so good as far as that goes.
yeah, I mean, you're right. It's most people would recognize you for sure, but it is just like interesting because just because they know that you do Hearthstone well or League of Legends well doesn't mean that you will do X thing well. So I've
Yeah.
always wondered about that. That's my observation. If I ever wanted to move onto different things to different esports, I'm always like, how do I convince myself that I can convince them that I would be good at this thing without doing years of work? Because that's what I did for StarCraft.
Right. It's just kind of, I mean, it just it takes people taking a chance on you, I think, to a certain
Mm,
extent. Even if you are well established, if you are doing a game for the first time, you know. But it's really on the caster to sort of like put in the work to make that chance worth it. And you know, I do feel like that's kind of a little bit of the credibility that I've built over the years too, is that people have seen me switch to new games and do well, and so there's that confidence, kind of that like, oh, he can do a new game. We know he's going to do the work. You know, we know he's going to be at least halfway decent first time out. So, you know, we know that there's a certain level of professionalism and polish that they'll get. So that helps for sure.
yeah. So going back to the non-freelance life, the stable gig life, did you how organized were the, I guess, how to say, in StarCraft, we never have really meetings. We get there and we have, here's the rehearsal, it lasts an hour, and then maybe at the end of the day they come over and they say, hey, sorry about that one mishap, you're free to go.
Sure,
you
yeah.
know. But when you get into these entrenched leagues like your League of Legends or anything that you've done, like, did you guys have a lot of actual meetings where
Oh
you
yeah,
would go in
tons.
and oh yeah, how for
Tons of meetings. It was a lot of work from home for the most part, but yeah, we'd have every Wednesday we'd have production meetings. So we'd start the day with like a big meeting with everybody together, and then you'd break off with different producers and sort of go over the individual matches and say, these are the story points we want to hit. Here are the graphics we're going to prepare for this. You know, and do that. So yeah, in a big league like that, like the LCS or the Overwatch league, there's going to be a lot of production meetings throughout the week as well, just to sort of review things, right? Hey, there's this new sponsor we need to talk about, you know, Cheez-Its or whatever, you know? So, yeah, there, when you get to be part of a big league, there are a lot of meetings. And then there's a lot of stuff too, where, you know, if you're doing the thing I talked about, where you're doing more than just showing up and casting, you're going to be involved with other meetings that you yourself set up to discuss different ways to improve the broadcast. Whether it's
Mhm.
something with a spectator, like I would meet with the observers sometimes to talk with them. Back when Jason Baker was the lead observer, you know, so there's other stuff that goes into it too. So whereas now, where I'm doing these TFT events, I think it's important. I've kind of realized to, even if you're doing these online events at these smaller orgs, to sort of recreate that in a way where you want to take time to discuss the product, right? What is the end
Mhm.
product supposed to be? What's the caster's contribution supposed to be to that? Is there any insight the caster can give the production to, you know, improve things, right? I think it's always important to see where you can be useful outside of just casting as well. And honestly, that's one of the reasons why I left the Overwatch League, was because towards the end of it, they literally just were more or less said, you know, show up for the meetings you're required to show up and cast, but we don't want any of your other feedback. And that's a far cry from the way things were when I came there in the first place, you know, and helped build the thing. So, you know, so at that point, you know, I'm out for more than just showing up and casting. I want more than that, you know, and I know I can benefit a broadcast more than just doing that. So yeah, so I think it's healthy when the talent's involved, and if the talent is not involved, even, you know, pushed away like that, it's a very unhealthy sign for a league or broadcast.
Yes, I agree. But the actual times you were organized and getting to meetings and being able to talk, that part is really sick.
Yeah, that
Just
was
not something
great.
that's something that really I think exists outside of the long-standing leagues. So we don't have too much of that, unfortunately, but I wish we did. Did you also do any like group study or analysis or feedback? There we go. Feedback of your actual individual casting, or was it just more of a tackle the production of the day problem?
There wasn't a lot of support for that. I worked on trying to set some of that up. I worked with a lot of the tier two casters, the contenders casters, and did a lot of feedback sessions with them. As far as the duos in the Overwatch League, everyone's kind of, you know, we picked up a lot of people that we trusted to do their jobs, so we didn't really need to do a lot of that kind of thing. That said, for a little while, early on, the league was bringing in some professionals from traditional sports, producers and people involved in sports casting that would review our stuff and give us feedback, which was great. We couldn't take all of it, obviously, because traditional sports and esports have some very different requirements as far as what makes a good broadcast. But it was always useful hearing that feedback from another perspective and working on that. And then there was this one guy that his main job is producing NFL games. And he's produced like Super Bowls and stuff. So having him review our broadcasts and say, why did you do this here? At this point, maybe you should be looking at the camera a little bit more, your hands are in the wrong spot, like just little polish things that you can improve on is really super useful stuff. So we got a lot of good feedback in that regard. But I think to a certain extent, the majority of, improvement as far as casting goes comes in the duo and individually.
That's so sick.
Rather than as a group. Yeah.
Gotcha. But you still, because you get together as a group to like tackle the storylines, is one of the things that you said like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is very important. And you've talked a lot about just like prioritizing the broadcasts over the individual casters.
I will say too, I think there was a lot of desire to meet as a group and do more group review. But it just kind of never really happened. It was one of those things where everyone kind of wanted to do it and just no one really ever got around to organizing it. So I definitely don't think it's a bad thing. I think the more as long as everyone can take feedback, okay. Some people are better at taking feedback than others, but as long as everyone's cool with it, cool with everybody being honest, and everyone's looking to support each other, then I think that's always a really valuable thing. And any league that I'm a part of in the future, I will push for something like that. But it is hard to get everybody at the table, so I just wanted to add that in there, that I think it is a good idea if you can make it happen.
Oh yeah, sure. Well, so when you start looking at more of just like the broadcast as a whole and what you can contribute to it, like I agree that's like the best end goal, but what would you tell people who are like still kind of coming up, like you are really cemented, you have all this experience in multiple different fields of casting, including actually bringing in other casters and whatnot. But as someone who is like growing in esports still, like what do you say to them as far as improving their casting as an individual? Are you going to tell them get rid of your ego and just only focus on the broadcast and that's what's going to do you better? Or are you going to say lots of critique, constantly ask people to look over your VODs? Like, what would be your advice?
I think a bit of everything, really. I mean, for one, definitely don't bring your ego along. It's good to have a strong sense of self-value. It's good to like yourself and be confident, but don't change confidence into entitlement. Just because you believe you're good enough to do something doesn't mean you deserve to do that thing, right? So that is definitely an important thing. Is I think ego is oftentimes the death of a career in esports. I've seen it happen many times actually, where someone just thought a bit too highly of themselves and they let everybody else know that, and nobody wanted to work with them. And so to a certain extent, you can be very skilled, but just if nobody wants to work with you, then none of that skill does any good, right? So there's that. I think a big part of improving as a commentator is just doing it, which sounds cliche, but just like putting yourselves in opportunities where you get to do that, whether it's a tiny thing for 10 people or something on your own YouTube channel or your own Twitch channel. Just like the act of doing it will make you better, and it will also show prospective employers that you are working on improving, right? And so it shows that level of ambition that a lot of people would be looking for, right? And people can look at your old stuff and then look at your current stuff and be like, oh, they did get better. They did improve. And that's cool. So I think that's part of it. As far as looking for feedback goes, I always, if anyone sends me, really anybody sends me like a demo reel or a cast they did and asks for feedback, I'll give it to them. I'm busy, but I'm not too busy to, be like, oh, sorry, peasant, I can't review your, VOD. I'm happy to do that, And I think a lot of other casters are too. So if there's a caster that you like, that you'd like their feedback, just send them a VOD and ask them. A lot of them will be happy to look at it and give you some really good feedback. So I think that's more accessible than people realize. Sometimes casters won't reply, and sometimes they will be too busy to do it. But I think the vast majority will. And if they can't do it right away, they'll at least let you know. Like a lot of times I'll get something and I can't do it right away, but I'll reply right away and say, hey, I'll definitely do this. Just, give me till next week. I'm a little bit busy this week, but I'll get around to it, So that's another thing I tell, newer casters is don't be afraid to reach out to people in the industry that you look up to and try to get their feedback, because a lot of them will be happy to give it, you know?
Yeah, I have a Fear Dragon actually did that for a few casters that I would have considered out of reach, and he was like, "Nope, they answered, and they're really
Oh
helpful." I
yeah.
was like, "Oh, wow."
We're all just normal, normal people, to a certain extent. I always like to say normal people with extraordinary, jobs, right? So it's at the end of the day, we're still just regular people that just happen to have this career, but that doesn't make us better than anyone else. So yeah, I do think most casters will reply if you message them, even if you're a quote unquote nobody.
Mm, yeah, I think so. I think what's also really important for anyone thinking of doing this is that you have to have, don't just be like, look at my demo reel. Okay, thanks, bye. Like, make sure to have like a list of questions and like what you think your weaknesses are and all that. Certainly been what's given me the best feedback. So, yeah.
Yeah,
In
for sure.
general, as someone who's been a caster and has also worked with like looking at casters, what do you look for in a caster? What makes you watch a caster and say, you know what, they're pretty good?
I think comfort is a big thing. You
Mm.
can tell when someone's uncomfortable on a broadcast because it shows through in every aspect of the commentating. I think the another thing that really jumps out at me right away when I'm watching a new commentator is how they're sort of like, especially from the play-by-play side, is how they're kind of directing the flow of things, the emotional flow of the game. If they're yelling and crazy about every single little thing that happens, that's a big problem. But if they're bringing things down, if they're setting the tone, if they're focusing on the players, that's a really good sign, right? Another thing is I look at how much they're talking about themselves and their own gameplay. There's definitely a time for
Mm.
that, but if all you talk about is your own games and be like, oh, in my game I like to do this too, and oh, in my game I don't like this so much. Dude, you're not a pro. Nobody cares. Like, talk about what the pros are doing. Generally, when I talk about my own play, uh, in most games, unless I am like legit good at the game, I'm going to be making a joke, right? I'm going to bring my own play up as a point of entertainment value, not as a point of, analytical stuff. With TFT, it's a little bit different because I can play that game at a high level. So I can sort of get more into the mentality of the pro player and relate that to my own gameplay. But 99% of the time, your own gameplay is not going to be relevant. So unless you're making a joke or using it for entertainment value, probably just don't talk about it. So that's another thing I kind of look for. Another big thing is how they treat their co-caster. A
Mm.
lot of people that are new at casting together, it'll be like person A says their thing, then person B says their thing, then they just alternate and go back and forth. Uh, I'm looking for a conversation, right?
Mm.
Uh, Good commentary is a conversation. You should feel like you're sitting on the couch next to the commentators and you're all having a discussion about the game. That's how the vibe should be, right? So if and this is another really, I think, important thing for new commentators to think about is that when you're casting, don't just think about yourself and what you could be saying. Think about what your co-caster is saying and how you can interact with that. Ask them questions, build off of what they started to say. Make it conversational. I think is some of the best advice you can give a new caster. So there's so much that you look for when you're evaluating commentary, but those are kind of some of the big ones that jump out to me at the moment.
Do you think that that whole like make it a conversation, be casual, has anything to do with your roots? I mean, StarCraft 2 commentating didn't start commentating, but
Sure.
Sosa certainly led some of the way, and they were very much two friends, two nerds wearing t-shirts, casting in
Yeah.
a studio. So, have you found anyone that disagreed with that and is more like super professional, just bants,
Well, I
Fox News
think
bants?
I think the evidence for making it conversational goes way, way back before esports. If you look at the best commentating duos in baseball and in football and stuff like that, it's very conversational. And I've read that same thing in a lot of like autobiographies from sportscasters that have been doing it for 60 years. The whole like make it sound like you're sitting on the couch with the fans. Like that's straight out of one of the autobiographies of a commentator that have been doing it, since the 50s. So it's Tastosis, I think, interestingly enough, were some of the first duos, whether they intended to or not, to bring traditional sports casting, things into esports casting. Where because making it conversational is very much like an old school sports casting thing that's been around forever. That's not anything revolutionary. But they were one of the first pairs, I think, because they're just such good friends that really implemented that in their broadcast and kind of showed people that, hey, this is a great way to do sports commentary, so yeah, I think it's just a good thing in general. And when sometimes people, I think, like to use the word professional to their sense of professional equals just dry and formal and tie wearing, but
Right.
professional really more means a very just fluid, smooth, enjoyable broadcast. Professional doesn't mean formal. It just means well executed. So I think being conversational is part of that.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. I mean, I don't listen to many esports broadcasts, but I always wondered how much could really be taken from it. So it's good to hear. So you would advise people to read into those autobiographies then?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think it's hugely helpful to read sportscasting autobiographies because it's not like we need to reinvent the wheel. We're not the first people to ever sportscast a game. So there's a lot to learn from traditional sports. Obviously, it can be taken too far. If you look at the LCS early on, that was too far into the traditional sports route. I think Overwatch a lot of times tries Overwatch League. You know, had the misunderstanding at the higher level that they wanted to be too much NFL, too much traditional sports, and we're still esports. So we still need to be our own thing. But as far as commentary goes, at least, there's definitely a lot of just good basics that you can transition from traditional sports to esports, and it should be,
That's very cool. I'll have to pick some of those up. On
Absolutely.
the topic of falling all the way back and Tastosis wearing their shirts 20 years old, whatever they were.
Uh-huh.
How has casting changed over the years in terms of just like how much better has casting gotten? Do you think that any of the professionalism that's brought in has really changed it from DoA back in 2010 to you now? Like, what does the 10 years look like as the transformation of esports casting?
I think the expectations of how a commentator should be on the broadcast has changed over time, but it's kind of cyclical. Where it got to the point where it's like, oh no, only suits on broadcast. Got to have that tie. Got to look quote unquote professional, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then one of the refreshing things with the Overwatch League, honestly, is that it did relax a little bit, and it did let people have their own styles. And we worked with a wardrobe person who named Haley, who was great in terms of really helping us dress like us, where we still looked good. Things still look polished. We didn't look like like we just woke up or something like that. But everyone had their own style, right? And that was kind of encouraged, which I think is fine. We don't need to have suits and ties in esports. Maybe for like a big grand finals, it's nice to respect the sort of gravitas per se of the match by dressing up a little bit more. That
Mm-hmm.
does enhance it, I think, in those situations. But I think it's fine in most matches to be dressed well, but be dressed comfortably. So it's interesting that we're kind of coming out the other side of the whole like overly formal approach to esports, kind of trying to ape traditional sports and that kind of stuff. And I would not be surprised at all to see traditional sports start to relax a little bit as well too, because they need to. They're kind of realizing that they're losing a lot of the younger audience, and we don't care about ties and suits. That doesn't have an effect on us,
Mm-hmm.
we just want to see people who are well dressed, and the definition of what that is, thankfully, is starting to get a little bit more flexible, especially for guys. Like, I think this is one thing where I've always been a little bit jealous of women in sports and traditional sports, because you get to wear a ton of different stuff. You've got all these dresses or pants or a number of many different things where guys are like, what color is your suit today? What color is your tie today? It's always the same thing. So it's great, I think, when guys can start to vary up their wardrobe a little bit more and break out of the just like, what is your suit going to be like today sort of mentality. So so it's funny that we're kind of seeing that shift, and it's about time.
I agree. I think traditional sports is going to start relaxing a bit as well. Some people, say that they need us more than we need them and all that stuff. But
Oh yeah, they do.
you,
they definitely do.
yeah, you talk about the way that, yeah, I always liked that Overwatch did not do suit and tie. And I mean, I just immediately thought of Monte in he wore like a bolo tie once.
Yeah.
Like a
Well,
my
some
setup.
people like that. And if that's fine,
Yeah.
if they want to wear a suit and tie and they wear it well, like Semler jumps to mind as someone who really loves the suit, more dressed up look, but
Yeah.
he rocks it really well,
Yeah.
I don't like it. I don't feel like I do a great job with that anyway. So, it's as long as there's some sort of cohesiveness between the co-casters look, there's definitely room for more and less quote unquote dressed up between the two.
Hmm. This is one thing I just forgot that I had talked about with friends, but I wonder if it is like, how important is it? The presenters on the camera. I'm going to say like not too important, but one thing I did mention was like actually Semler is the perfect example because Semler is actually a sharp dresser in general.
Oh, one of the
He's
best
always
dressed in esports by far.
yeah. Yeah, I got to meet him a couple times working in Burbank, and he was just always on point. So, anyways, I was like, yeah, I guess guys maybe have it harder. I was talking with some of the guy casters in StarCraft, and I was like, what can you really do? Like, you wear a different watch, I suppose. But then I was like, my one critique of you guys and me, I'm not the best dresser ever, but like,
Sure.
yeah, we
Me
never
neither.
do that. We go to the thing and we bring our shirts that we have to. We actually had requirements before, but anyways. And no one has like a nice watch. No one has like
Mm.
a cool tie. No one like so most of them have their suits fitted, but like not everyone type thing. And I was like, do you guys think that StarCraft just like could just dress better? Like we could actually just look really nice on camera. And of course, everyone's kind of
More
like,
can
yeah, I
always be
guess,
done.
but like,
See, I actually I have a really nice watch that my wife bought me, but I always forget to wear
ooh.
it. That's my problem. It's sitting here, but it's a nice watch, but
Yeah,
so I do take some responsibility for that. I could be doing better.
yeah. I guess it's like almost not. It's not really that important, but I always wonder if it's something that we could be
People notice it. It does
on.
it does add to it, and why not? It's fun to it's sort of fun to try to look good. So it's always a
Yeah, it
challenge
can
for
be.
me as I in my like hair that's way too long in my World of Warcraft t-shirt, the paragon of fashion.
For me, it just is like everyone always thinks it's like a different person, which I mean, it's enjoyable. I always think of it as almost wearing a mask when I cast. Like I'm pretty
Yeah,
different,
it's
but
fun.
that also helps when they put me in a bunch of makeup and like do my hair, and I look pretty darn different. But
Well, so one of the
in a
fun
way, it's
things with
helpful.
OGN was that they picked all our suits and they were always ridiculous, and it was great, and we just that was one thing where it's like it became part of the show, became part of the entertainment of the show. It's like what insane suits are Monte and DoA going to be wearing this season, and
Yeah,
so we
yeah.
didn't fight that at all. We were just like, yeah, throw whatever you want us to wear, we're ready. It's okay, today it's like it's the tuxedo that's completely like silver rose patterned. Yeah, let's do it. Let's throw that on there. Rainbow lapel sounds great. So in that case, we didn't have any input into our wardrobe because we knew it was just going to be insane no matter what it was, and we just embraced it.
Yeah. I remember I was never really like super into League of Legends. Like I watched a decent amount of Overwatch actually, but League of Legends was like, not so much for me. But I remember even back then, I remember hearing about you guys and your wardrobes. And
It
there's
was a
that like,
facet of the show. Yeah.
yeah, the famous like image of you also like doing a cosplay once. It
Oh
was
yeah,
kind of
yeah. We
something that
dressed up
happened.
as Shen, the worst ninja
Yeah.
ever. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, he's like the only one I really play.
He's a terrible ninja, though. You got to admit, he has no sense of subtlety. He
No, he
throws a big
doesn't.
sword around now, and he's like, "Hey, I'm coming in." He like yells something when he teleports. Like, dude, that's the opposite of what ninja should do.
He's a pretty bad ninja. You're absolutely correct.
It's true.
One of my last questions here actually comes from, you might remember him, Axlav.
Oh yeah, no,
Yeah.
I used to live with him.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
at IP when I worked at IPL, I lived in the former Rain team house, with Frank Fields.
Wow.
We called that house the Frank Fields experience, but it's so it was me. Let's see who else lived there. A lot of people lived there. I think Torch lived there for a little while. I lived there. Joshy moved in after I moved out, but yeah, Axlav lived there for a while too. So I remember he and I would like stay up late and watch Brood War in Korea for that short time I was in the U.S. in 2012. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
that's pretty
so
sick.
great. I can't wait to hear what he's got to say.
Yeah, he's really come back and he like watches a ton. So hey, hi.
Shout out to Axlav.
So he says, what are the biggest differences and or similarities that you found when working with different games and scenes?
So I think as far as similarities goes, you'll run into the same personalities as far as the casters and the players go. So it's comfortable in that way. We're all gamers. We all love video games. We're all competitive. So there's that sort of comfort that you can experience going from game to game. as far as like casting goes, man, there's so many differences between each game. You really do kind of almost start from square one when you approach casting a new game, because they all have different sort of mechanics, they all have different pacing. You can't force, and one of the big things I learned with Overwatch is that you really can't force a style on a game. You have to sort of adjust to the game and adjust your casting around it. And it was a lot easier to cast when I started doing that, even if it wasn't the way I really wanted to. But as far as like some of the biggest differences, I would say the biggest difference is usually pacing in terms of points of excitement, how much time you have to sort of, have fun on the broadcast, goof around a little bit. Obviously, League of Legends, StarCraft, a lot of time to do that where you can get the analysis in, but then you also have a lot of time for just being entertaining, which is one of the unique fun things about esports is that the talent, the casters are really called on more to be entertainers in their own right than in traditional sports. So the amount of what you can do with that differs greatly between games. So that's interesting, but I suppose that's sort of an answer to the question.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. What are the things you think stay with you? Like, what are just good broadcasting qualities that stay with you no matter what esport?
For me, I always look for silly things. Like I always keep an eye out for like something that doesn't make sense or something that's just kind of funny. Like with League, there was all sorts of like skin ideas you could come up with, or just some sort of interaction on the map that if you put it in a real world sense just seems ridiculous. So that's something I always kind of look for. Is just silly things I can just insert into the broadcast, like in Overwatch, for instance. Because it takes place in a lot of different parts around the world. There's a lot of signs in different languages, and so I just started like trying to read them on the broadcast. And obviously, my pronunciation is terrible. And I know there's people out there that speak those languages in the audience, and I know that unless they like are people that don't like enjoy fun, they're probably just going to laugh about it and be entertained. So and it only takes a second or two to read that sign, and I kind of intentionally do it poorly, but it's just kind of a fun entertaining sort of like breakaway from the rest of the game. And over time they started emphasizing that, where the observers would specifically zoom in on signs so that I would read them on the broadcast. So just kind of that's one thing I've always tried to carry from game to game, is just to look out for like fun, silly things to just like insert here and there real fast.
I think that's something I've always noted about your broadcasting. You can very easily be funny. Like you don't set up a joke necessarily. Like, hey Monte, what's 2 + 2? But you'll
Yeah.
just be casting, and suddenly you'll recognize something and say a joke, and I'm like, huh, I never would have done that. Like that type of thing I found a lot in your casting. Do you think that's always been your humor? I don't particularly remember, I'm gonna be
Yeah,
honest, StarCraft 2 casting from you, but or
sure.
is it something you worked on?
Yeah, that's kind of always been part of it. It's I would credit that to my dad, who has that sense of humor about the world, where we'll just be out and about and he'll see something and he'll make a joke like that. And also just like my entertainment influences, which would be like Weird Al and Mystery Science Theater 3000. So a lot of
Mm.
referential, sort of off the cuff, semi improv kind of humor, where I just and I was always entertained by that, and it was sort of the way I was built. The way I was conditioned to sort of like do things from a very young age. So yeah, it's just I've kind of just always been that way, even off the broadcast, even before I started esports. So it's just it's just who I am. I just kind of do that. It's
Just
not
worked
something
out.
practiced per se. It just is how I operate in the world.
Yeah. Do you ever like sit down before the broadcast and set up jokes or lines that you want to do?
Not often.
Mm.
Once in a while, like Monty and I would be hanging out, and we'll just be talking about the game, and something funny will happen, and one of us will go like, "Oh man, we should use that on the broadcast." And so
Mm.
once in a while, we'll find something funny that we know is going to be applicable, to a match, to a specific match, or to a specific hero or something, and so we'll use that. But 99% of the time, it's just off the cuff.
All right. Well, this has been a really enlightening conversation. Thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking about almost all the esports that you've done. Definitely should tune into your TFT broadcast to see you tweeting about it.
Yeah.
You say at least every week.
Well, it's a really fun game. Like I said, you know, I know you've probably got a lot of StarCraft listeners, and TFT definitely scratches that mental itch that, you know, comes from playing games like StarCraft as well. I'm not saying stop playing StarCraft, but I'm definitely saying add TFT into the StarCraft you're already playing, and you'll enjoy a lot of the same things that you enjoy in StarCraft. And I think that with the esport as well, there's a lot of that too. So yeah, so I would encourage anyone to give TFT a look. Very cool.
There's actually TFT in StarCraft too. It's called Star Chess, if I'm not
Right.
mistaken.
I heard about that. I need to try it. Funny enough, the first MOBA I ever played was in StarCraft 2. It was like Assault on the something. What was it called? You know the one I'm talking about.
I do actually. I also played it like a few times.
Yeah.
It's not Aeon of Strife. That's what I'm thinking of right now.
No, it was called something
War.
like Assault on the something tower or something like that. I don't know. But either way, like, so yeah, I mean, so the StarCraft 2 arcade, there's definitely a lot of good stuff in there.
Yeah, there is.
Yep.
Anyways, like, best of luck with your freelancing. Sounds like it's going pretty well. So
well, we're paying the bills so far. That's all I can really ask for, you know.
I mean, in California, right? So that's like,
yeah, exactly.
Well.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's doing that, and then just really growing TFT Esports has been a lot of fun, and being back in the trenches and back at the grassroots stuff. It's kind of what I wanted out of this year, and it's definitely been more challenging because of the whole pandemic thing. But it's a fun challenge.
I know you do some other stuff like Warhammer, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, man, I haven't had very much time for that lately. Oh, it's I used to do a lot more painting streams and a lot more just painting in general, but I've kind of had to put that to the side a little bit. But hopefully get back to doing that. I've got a whole hobby table like right to the right of me that's been untouched for weeks, and it feels terrible to look at it. But yeah, but I love miniature painting, and so hopefully I'll have some more time for that before the end of the year.
Yeah. Anything else you'd like to shout out?
Well, thanks for bringing me on the show. It was a lot of fun, a lot of really intriguing questions to think about. Other than that, I guess the only shout outs I have is to follow my social media. If you're willing, GG DoA on Twitch and Twitter, and then DoA Games on Instagram. Someone stole GG DoA from me there, and I can't get it. Bummer.
Well, thank you so much for sitting down, talking to me about esports as a whole.
My pleasure.
Probably one of the more experienced and just variety casters that I've gotten to talk to. So really, really cool.
Well, we'll
thanks
do this
for watching.
again in 10 years.
Yes, let's do this. 2030.
Another retrospective. Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. Hopefully in a better year as well when there's not, COVID-20 or something.
Seriously.
Yeah. But yeah, thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you for the next episode. Bye, guys.